All right, good evening. Welcome to the Asheville City Council meeting. I'm Mayor Manhammer. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting on May 26th. All council members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through holding these council meetings a little bit differently. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by dialing 855-925-2801 and entering the code 8914. We are also broadcasting live on Charter Cable Channel 193 and on AT&T Uverse Channel 99. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. For tonight's meeting, we have also added the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. This is the first time we've been able to provide that. To call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 8914. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, callers will hear, for more options, please press star. Pressing star will allow callers to continue to listen live. Leave a comment as a message or join a speaker queue. Callers should only join the speaker queue during the time the agenda item on which they'd like to speak is being discussed. The speaker queue will alternate with voice messages left before tonight's meeting. If you are watching the meeting through your television or the live stream while you are listening to the meeting by phone, please be sure to turn down the volume on your television or your computer. Please also be aware there is a broadcast delay of 4 to 10 seconds. Television has the least delay of around 4 seconds. I will now go through and introduce the council members who are participating virtually. Please make sure to mute your microphones if you are not speaking. When you would like to speak, unmute your microphone, and please remember to mute your microphones after you're done speaking. Council and staff, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Vice Mayor Whistler.
Good evening.
Councilman Haynes.
Hello.
Councilman Kapoor.
Hello.
Councilwoman Mayfield.
Sorry. Hello, everyone.
All right, Councilwoman Smith.
Hello.
Councilman Young.
Hello.
City Manager Deborah Campbell.
Hello, everyone.
City Attorney Brad Branham.
Good evening, everyone.
And City Clerk Maggie Burleson.
Hello.
All right. Before we begin the agenda, if everyone could please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First, I'd just like to say I hope everyone had a nice Memorial Day. We had our first an unusual virtual Memorial Day ceremony right here in City Hall where I am. It was held in council chambers. If you missed it, it is on the YouTube channel and you can have an opportunity to watch it. I want to thank all those that were involved in planning that and putting it together. It was a very nice event. All right, tonight we have no proclamations. So we're going to move directly into our consent agenda. If you would like to comment live on the consent agenda, please call in and listen to the meeting by phone. And remember to turn down your television or computer if you are also watching the meeting. And again, remember, there is a little bit of a delay. Television is about 4 seconds behind the live meeting, and the stream may be more like 10 seconds behind the live meeting. Listening by phone, you will experience the meeting in real time. And again, after the welcome message, you'll be prompted to press star for more options. Next, you'll have 3 options. If you'd like to join the speaker queue for this item, please press 3. If you'd like to comment on another public hearing item, please wait until the item is being discussed. Again, listening by phone means you hear the meeting without a 4 to 10 second delay. Do any members of council have any questions or comments about the consent agenda or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. This is Gwen Whistler.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second. Shanika.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We do not have any voicemails regarding the consent agenda. Staff, do we have any live calls for public comments for the consent agenda?
Mayor, we do not currently have any calls in the queue for the consent agenda.
Okay. Maggie, just to double check with you, we don't have any public comment on the consent agenda. For some reason, I thought we had received one comment on the consent agenda. You might be muted.
No public comment on the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. In order to conduct virtual voting throughout tonight's meeting, there are a few changes. First, council, if you'd like to, I already went through this, make a motion, and you've done it correctly. And to vote, we'll use a roll call vote. This is something that the state is requiring while we're under this emergency declaration and while we're conducting virtual meetings. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. I'm going to call a roll call vote. When I call your name, please say aye or nay. Vice Mayor Whistler.
Aye.
Councilman Haynes.
Aye.
Councilman Kapoor.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayfield.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smith.
Aye.
Councilman Young.
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. Thank you. The consent agenda passes. Under presentations, we have one presentation on tonight's agenda. The city manager, Deborah Campbell, will introduce the chief financial officer, Barbara Whitehorn, who will give the presentation on the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It is my pleasure to present to you the manager's and staff's fiscal year 2021 budget. Honestly, this was not the budget we were hoping to present this year, but under the circumstances, I think we are presenting a budget that addresses key service needs and council priorities. This was not an easy task to make the numbers work and even just to do the work of developing a budget. So I want to personally thank especially the staff from Finance and Management, Barbara Whitehorn, Tony McDowell, Taylor Floyd, Lauren Brune, and Eleanor Holbrook for their tireless efforts. I also want to thank the executive team, department heads, city council, and all those who worked to make this happen. Barbara Whitehorn is going to be doing the bulk of the presentation. I think you've already mentioned that she is the chief financial officer for our city. But I would like to just provide you with an overview. Yes, you can go to the next slide, please, of what we will be presenting this evening. As we said, Mayor, you said during your introduction, we're going to provide you with some information on the year-end results. We'll also present, for the most part, the majority of the time will be spent on the fiscal year 2021 recommended budget. And as you know, there have been significant challenges. And as I said earlier, we think that we have provided you with a budget that addresses our needs, that will be responsive to if things just don't happen the way we have projected them to happen. We have contingency plans also of how, if needed, we need to adjust the budget. Second slide, please. Next slide. And so this has been a long process. We started much earlier in terms of developing the budget than we normally do. We started in October, and you can see the green checks is where we have been, and the bottom row is where we are going. Tonight, the manager's proposed budget will be presented to you. There are hopefully, no surprises. We have had a number of work sessions, and so there will be generally no changes from discussions we had in those work sessions. The next two meetings are very critical. The meeting on June 9th would be the public hearing, and we assume that will be done virtually. And toward the end of the presentation, in terms of next steps, Barbara will provide you with the detailed manner in which the public can participate and provide public input. And then D-Day is June 23rd, which is the council adoption date. Next slide. And so generally, I like to start presentations with the end in mind. And so we're going to have, again, a lot of information thrown at you tonight and to the public. We will have lots of numbers and so forth. But if you don't remember anything, hopefully you will remember these key takeaways. That there is ongoing major uncertainty. We do not know what the future may bring. However, we think we are prepared to respond. This is essentially a continuation budget. There are very, very limited service enhancements, not because we don't want to enhance services, but we just cannot afford to do it. And it would be generally considering what's happening in our community and in our country. Not a good thing at this point in time. I want to commend and thank our departments who worked, as I said earlier, tirelessly to develop this budget. They looked deep in their budgets and offered up cuts, but to the extent that it would not impact operational needs for our community. And even with state and federal support, and Barbara will be talking about this in a little bit more detail, we still will need our emergency fund, our fund balance, to support some of our operational needs. And so with that, next slide, I will turn it over to Barbara to go into a little bit more detail. Barbara, thank you.
Thank you, Manager Campbell. Mayor, members of council, thank you so much. I'm Barbara Whitehorn, Chief Financial Officer for the City of Asheville. I'm going to start with a little bit of our year-end results for fiscal year 1920. I know we've reviewed these a number of times, the estimates. However, given the economic uncertainty, I think coming back to them in each meeting is really important. So we do expect significant revenue loss from sales tax, in particular, ABC revenue and investment earnings. We identified about $1 million in savings in departments and through a hiring freeze. And we anticipate now between a $2.5 and $4.5 million use of general fund balance. And that's down from our initial estimates of up to 5.5. Then we refined that to up to 5. And now we think it won't be any more than 4.5 million. So that's a little bit of good news in uncertain times. We do anticipate that available fund balance at year end will drop to between 14 and 16%. So let's look at sales tax a little bit. Sales tax has been the most significantly impacted of all of the city's revenue streams because, of course, with the economy closing, we aren't seeing retail sales. So we're looking at, on this slide, trends for retail sales. Nationally, in March, there was a drop in retail sales of 5.7%. In North Carolina, there remained an increase of 1.8%, and in Buncombe County of 1.9%. Now, we estimated for March that we would see a decrease in sales tax receipts of 15%. Now, these are not a one-for-one match. So you can't say that because there's a 1.9% increase in retail sales that we're going to see sales tax receipts to that degree. But we do believe that given the numbers in March, our 15% decrease is reasonable. And then for April, nationally, we saw a 21.6% decrease in retail sales nationally. We don't have numbers yet for North Carolina or Buncombe County, but staff estimated a decrease of 30% for sales tax revenue in April. And given the retail sales numbers, we believe that our estimates at this point are still quite reasonable. And we just wanted to reassure you all, council and the public, that we are tracking these very closely, and we're trying to look at retail sales as a sort of leading indicator of what our revenue is going to look like in the next few months. And then at the bottom of this page, you'll see that our year-end sales tax estimate is just over $26 million, and our budget was $27.6 million. So that's down about 5.7% or $1.6 million from what we budgeted. Okay, go ahead. All right, so state and federal assistance. There's a significant amount of state and federal assistance available, which is actually part of what makes this economic crisis significantly different than the economic crisis that we saw in 2008, 2009. In 2008 and 9, everything sort of hit, and we had to figure out how to budget with no assistance from the state or the federal government. Fortunately, because this crisis was something that everybody saw coming, and it hit sort of in a different way. It's a different kind of crisis. There is state and federal funding available to help balance the budget, to help cover those shortfalls. So some of those streams are the state COVID Relief Fund Assistance Program, and the city is getting $942,000 from Buncombe County as part of that program. That money will go into this current year budget, the 2019-20, to cover shortfalls caused by COVID. Then we have Federal CARES Act funding, $615,000 for Community Development Block Grant Program, and $3.7 million for COVID-19 transit impacts. Those will be spread out over this year and next year. There is also the Department of Justice Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program. It's a bit of a mouthful. And from that, we have $153,000 in a grant to the police department. So state and federal assistance will help to get us through this crisis. Okay, go ahead. So year-end results in enterprise funds. The general fund is the fund that we mostly talk about because that's where we have our big rainy day fund, our fund balance, where most of the city's major departments are: public works, police, fire. But we have other funds that are treated as business entities, and that includes parking and transit, water, stormwater. And the year-end results for those enterprise funds, parking in particular has been hit hard by COVID. We see a revenue loss from the free parking of about $500,000 a month. And we have identified savings to reduce the expected fund balance use by about $100,000. If you'll recall, we thought that that was going to be $1.5 million. We think it'll be about $1.4 million. So there'll be a use of fund balance in parking. Transit has seen significant revenue loss from fare free. But the transit COVID-19 expenses and budget shortfall will be covered with CARES Act funding. Okay, go ahead. Financial summary for the year end. The general fund will use fund balance, as we discussed, between 2.5 and 4.5 million. Staff will continue to monitor sales tax and regularly report to council. We want to make sure that as things happen and as we get more information, we're able to pivot if we need to. The parking fund use of fund balance, approximately 1.4 million. And again, state and federal assistance will be helping to offset the financial impacts. So the last few months, in conclusion, have had significant impact on our budget for this fiscal year. And as we move into fiscal year 2021, the manager's recommended budget certainly takes into account the significant changes we're seeing because of COVID-19. Okay, go ahead. So our key drivers for budget development this year were even more economic uncertainty, minimal revenue growth, which we anticipate will be used up through operating costs, regular operating cost increase, even after we've made reductions to expenditures. And while enhancements may be considered later in the year if the fiscal picture improves, there's no additional revenue right now. And if council wanted to add anything, we would nevertheless have to have additional revenue to add anything. But there's certainly nothing new or enhanced recommended in this budget. Okay, go ahead. Our guiding principles for the budget remain the same: essential service delivery, enhancing customer value, and strategic alignment. These don't change in a crisis. They're still the critical things that we as a city want to do. Go ahead. But how do we implement those guiding principles in a crisis? And the keys really are ensuring the safety of staff and the community, working to limit impacts on existing services, whether they're essential or strategic. Now is not the time to reduce the services our community relies on. And we want to remain prepared for the plan to change. Okay, go ahead. So what does the budget look like overall? We continue funding for existing services with very limited enhancements and no new money. We don't have new programs or initiatives of any particular significance. We maintain the current property tax rate of 42.89 cents, and we recommend no fee increases. Okay, go ahead. So this summary slide is a little busy, and I apologize for that, but we wanted to give an idea of how the budget has changed from fiscal year 1920 to fiscal year 2021's recommended budget. The general fund is seeing a slight increase of 1.7%, and that is almost entirely due to transit support because of the enhancements put in place in January of 2020. And we anticipate a use of fund balance in fiscal year 21 of 1.5 million. Transit services has a significant increase of almost 21%, and that again is the enhancements from January of 2020, and also the additional costs of paratransit we anticipate. And transit services is a general fund supported fund, so much of that increase comes from the general fund, which is why you see the increase in the general fund. Parking services, we have a decrease in the budget of just over 7%, but no use of fund balance. The Harrah's Cherokee Center has a decrease of 22%. That's the anticipated impact of COVID-19 and not opening until at least calendar year 21. So there was some use of fund balance just to balance their budget just over $200,000. And then water resources, their budget is decreasing by 18%, and that's due to the removal of the capital fee. And there is some use of fund balance, but it isn't in the water resource operating fund. It's in the capital fund because that was a capital fee that's dedicated exclusively to capital projects and maintenance. Okay, go ahead. Okay, general fund revenues. Now we're getting down to brass tacks. Property tax, we anticipate 3.9% growth overall, but there's a lowered collection rate from the county. So not a lot of impact there. Sales tax, we're projecting no growth over the course of the year, but what's important to understand when we say zero growth, we don't anticipate the same amount of revenue coming in every month that we had this year. What we're forecasting is that for the first 8 months of the year, we will see decreases in collections of sales tax. And then we will start to see increases again when we hit March and April, when the economy this year was shut down. So we anticipate that next year the economy will not be shut down. So we should see some sales tax in those months, which bumps that up. And so overall, we anticipate flat sales tax. Development fees, we anticipate a 7% decline. ABC revenue, about a 10% decline. And again, just to revisit ABC revenue, it seems like people are drinking more because it's a crisis. Sorry, that's kind of a joke. But the bulk of ABC revenue actually comes from restaurants purchasing liquor. So if restaurants are not open at full capacity, they're buying less liquor, and that's why ABC revenue is expected to decline next year. And investment earnings, because of the Fed's adjustment down in rates, we anticipate a $1.1 million decline there as well. Okay, go ahead. General fund operating expenditures. Our primary goal in developing this budget was continuity of operations. We wanted to continue transit support, and we collaborated with departments all over the city to hold operating budgets flat year over year. And that's an incredibly challenging thing because everything increases in price every year. No matter how hard you try, you can't necessarily spend the amount of same money on a gallon of milk this year and next year, right? Because prices always go up. So keeping budgets flat required directors and their staff to really get in there and decide what they could cut in order to afford the things to maintain continuity of operations. And this budget overall was developed with intentionality and a focus on equity for the community. All right, go ahead. So given the lowered revenue and the uncertain economy, there are some salary and wages issues that we had to address. This is the first year in quite a while that there is no general wage increase for employees. We are funding the minimum 31.2 for annual pay and the required local government employee retirement system increase. We are assuming a continuation of the existing hiring freeze through the first 6 months of fiscal year 21, and we are delaying implementation of other recommendations of the compensation study, which includes an evaluation of the base pay of all employees, including firefighters, because that's something that's been coming up. All of those positions will be evaluated. And speaking of firefighters, we wanted to add a little something about that. Go ahead. The firefighter pay plan right now, we want to just give a little context for this. This is being evaluated by the consultants that are working on the total compensation plan. Currently, however, trainee pay annually is $32,630. Firefighter starting pay is $33,935. And then there are step increases, of course, within the firefighter pay of 2.5%, usually annually. And most firefighters stay within that firefighter classification for about 2 years, and then they're promoted to senior firefighter, at which point their annual pay goes to $40,603. Firefighters are also eligible for education pay and certification pay. Education pay is between 1.5 and 5%, depending on the level of education. And certification pay is for special certifications, for example, hazardous materials handling. But this is just background on what the firefighter pay plan looks like today. And this is being evaluated as part of the total compensation study.
Barbara, this is VJ. If I could, yes, just back there really quick for the employees that do have a step scale, is the proposal in the manager's budget to still allow those steps to go, or are the steps frozen as well?
The steps are not frozen.
Okay, so in this case, even though there's no general pay increase, a firefighter who hasn't reached max base or senior or hasn't reached the max of the step is actually getting a 2.5% increase, and I assume that would be similar to a police officer if they're also in a step system. Is that accurate?
Okay, Peggy is telling me no. Do you want to? I'm going to have Peggy. You want to come up here?
Increase, just like all other non-interest stuff.
Okay.
I'm happy to come up.
I'm going to let Peggy come up and answer that. I'm going to mute, and she's going to come up and answer that because I think I will destroy it.
Hi, Councilman BJ. Your question was regarding the step plan, and the firefighters do not actually have a step plan in the true sense of what you think of as a step plan. They would receive the 2.5% annually, just as other employees. They do, however, have opportunities for other certification pay, as Barbara mentioned. So I'll just stop there and see if there's a follow-up question.
There's not. I understand what you're saying now.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm glad I had Peggy answer that. All right, any further questions on that, or are we good? Yes. Okay, go ahead. Okay, next. I think it's really important to address why we aren't making deeper cuts today, because we do have a continuation budget that we're presenting to council. So what we're trying to do is create an environment with flat budgets that maintain the level of service to the community, minimizing any increases. And of course, our overall increase is driven by transit, but we do want to maintain all of the services that we currently provide. The amount of work that's expected of employees given this crisis is increasing. So what we decided to do was really hold steady and prepare for change, and really be ready to pivot if we need to make significant changes. So staff has worked on a number of plans to make deeper cuts, to change service levels, all kinds of things that we don't want to have to do, but the reality is we have to plan for those things just in case. We do have strategies in place for a prolonged recession. The first thing is that we are going to communicate early and often with council and the community. We will be giving monthly updates on sales tax, on other revenues, and on expenditures so that you know exactly what we're seeing, as well as on the economic indicators that give us a picture of what we can expect. Potentially, we would continue the hiring freeze. We would defer maintenance and capital investments. And lastly, we would make service cuts. That would be the last thing we would want to do in any scenario for deep cuts, would be service cuts. Okay, go on. Okay, fiscal year 21 general fund operating recommendations. We do recommend the following 3 programs that were not included in the previous budget. But to be clear, this is a reallocation of existing funds. It's not adding to the base budget. We recommend reallocation of some strategic partnership funds to support the Asheville City Schools After School Coordinator, $43,000 to the Parks and Recreation Department for extended community center hours and summer youth teen programming, and $15,000 to Pisgah Legal Services Tenant Eviction Response Team. So those are the recommendations in the budget that are additional programs. But again, to be clear, it's not costing additional money. It's asking to reallocate existing funds. Go ahead. So council strategic priorities. It was really important to staff that we emphasize that even in these economically uncertain times, we have strategic priorities that should be ongoing, that really are important to our community, and really in many cases address equity and some of the most important things in the city. So in transportation, we are still working on the transit master plan. The enhancements that were put in place in January 2020 are, of course, continuing to be funded. The CARES Act is going to help with that significantly. That will be spent for upfits for safety, including the barriers to protect drivers, hopefully adding back the routes that were cut, the 170, WE1, and S6. As you know, in the consent agenda tonight, there was a contract to bring in additional help to supplement our current buses, because we can only have 10 people on a bus at a time. And on routes that are very busy, we don't want to leave people behind. So we basically are having multiple buses come and pick people up to ensure that those routes can continue at the capacity they need. We're hoping to add back the routes that had to be cut initially. And you'll remember at the last council meeting, you approved about $500,000 for the barriers to protect the drivers. So there's a lot going on with transit, and I think it's important to emphasize that. We are continuing with the Haywood Page Plan. The Climate Justice Initiative and renewable energy installations that were previously funded are still in the plan and ongoing, and several other items. Go ahead. So general fund summary. Revenue is anticipated to come in at about 133.1 million, expenditures at 134.6. So we are using fund balance to balance the budget, and that's 1.5 million. And I do like to point out at this point that fund balance is our rainy day fund. Fund balance is specifically intended for this kind of economic uncertainty when we can't be sure that revenues and expenditures are going to balance. Fund balance, this is why we have fund balance. This is why it's so important to maintain a level of fund balance that can help support the city in a crisis like this. We are focusing on continuity of operations and existing programs, and the fund balance appropriation will reduce the fund balance to the range of 13 to 15% of expenditures. Okay, go ahead. In the enterprise funds, there are no fee increases in water or stormwater. If you'll recall, the original budget that we brought to you in early March during your retreat, we did have the annual incremental increases in both of those funds. However, we don't feel that this is the time to raise any fees, given the impact of this crisis on the community. There is significant uncertainty about the re-implementation of fees for transit and parking, and that may significantly impact revenue in those funds. And even when parking fees are reinstated, they will be likely quite slow to rebound. We don't anticipate suddenly, full parking decks again and streets full of people. Okay, go ahead. The transit fund is seeing 2.1 million, 21% increase in costs. And as we discussed before, that's continuation of service enhancements and paratransit. And the Harrah's Cherokee Fund has seen their budget reduced by 1.1 million to reflect fewer expected events, and they have a small use of fund balance as well. Okay, go ahead. Water Resources Fund, again, no fee increases, and the water CIP charge is being eliminated, and that's about $7.4 million reduction in revenue. The Water Capital Fund balance will make up that difference. And we are working with external consultants on a rate study to really better balance the cost burden between commercial and residential customers for the system and the capital maintenance of it. Okay, go ahead. Enterprise fund summary. Again, this busy slide. Y'all have already seen this, so I don't need to go into it in detail, but we do see significant decreases in 3 out of 4 of the funds we've discussed. Go ahead. Capital Improvement Program. Projects that are already underway will continue, but we are not funding any new projects this year. Projects are included only if a delay could jeopardize external funding. For example, if there's a grant associated with it that has a specific timeline. And our GEO bond projects from the 2016 GEO bonds are continuing to ensure that they are completed within the time frame. Okay, go ahead. So the key takeaways, revisiting Deborah's key takeaways, there is ongoing major uncertainty. This is a continuation budget with limited service enhancements, and departments worked really hard to make cuts with a focus on minimizing operational impacts. And even with the state and federal support that we expect, the fund balance is needed to support operations. Okay. Now, next steps. Today is the manager's proposed budget presentation. And then on June 9th will be the public hearing, which will have the live telephone, pre-recorded and written public comment accepted. And then budget adoption will be June 23rd. And this final slide is just details for the public on how to participate in that public hearing. So are there any questions?
Mayor, if I could just thank
She froze.
She froze, yeah.
Can you guys hear me? It looks like Deborah froze. And I'm guessing what she was going to do is thank all staff. Is she back? Nope.
Very much. And we really just appreciate your help. Thank you. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Okay, you were in and out a little bit there, Deborah, but we heard the very end there.
So
Oh, now she's muted.
No.
Okay. Most important thing was to say thank you for
Okay.
your council's engagement.
Well, and thank you and all the staff who worked so hard to pivot here so quickly under the circumstances we're in right now, which, we had a full council retreat, had a budget discussion not too long ago, and everything has changed dramatically since then. So thank you very much. Council, do you have any questions? We will have, obviously, the public hearing on the budget, not a vote, but a public hearing on the budget at our next meeting. But do you have any questions of staff tonight or comments before we close out this portion of the agenda?
So Mayor, this is VJ. Just one request of staff on the capital projects. When we get at some point, you noted that there will be some that will be continuing. Can you just list those at some point? Just to have a list of which of those projects, and it may actually be in the budget document itself, but just so folks understand that there will be capital projects going on next year. It's just that there's not going to be any new ones in particular.
Absolutely. We can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to add to that, that was a little bit confusing in all the documents that we got about there not being any new capital projects, which made it sound like there's going to be no capital projects, which of course isn't the case. And the GEO bond was specifically, mentioned that will continue. And then the annual funding of our regular annual funding of capital projects and the capital project pipeline outside the GEO bond was going to continue. I read that to mean we're not going to be embarking on something beyond what was already in the planning pipeline and already had funding planned for it. That's how I read that.
That is exactly correct. We're not adding anything to the pipeline. We've got things in the hopper coming down, but we're not adding to it.
And I noticed there was somewhat of a list of some of the projects. I always would hope we would put something in there that just says, this isn't exhaustive, because it's interesting. You'll see projects happening around town, but they're not in our list of projects, but they are, for example, Farwood Avenue was just repaved this last year. Well, it doesn't show up in any of the capital projects, but it's it's technically a repaving. Chestnut Street. I'm just rattling off a couple. This always happens though, where there are various projects that are happening and they just don't make the big lists, but they're part of our regular street projects, for example.
That's right. We actually have an allocation annually that is for street repaving and sidewalks. So often you'll find streets that you're like, oh, I had no idea that was going to get done. But we can probably ask Public Works to give a list of what they anticipate completing, if you would like.
Okay. I've got a note that Julie got frozen out. She is rebooting. Okay. By the way, virtual meetings require incredible level of multitasking. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for that presentation. And next, we're going to turn to our public hearings agenda. We have, and we're going to move out of here we go. We have 5 scheduled public hearings on our agenda tonight. There is a request to continue several of them, but the first 2 are ready to go. The first one is a public hearing to consider a land use incentive grant application for 2 restaurant court rental community, Bowcatcher Vista LLC. Again, if you'd like to comment live on this item, please call in and listen to the meeting by phone, and remember to turn down your television or computer if you're also watching the meeting, and that there is going to be a delay a little bit between what you see and what you're hearing on your phone. After you hear the message, when you call in, you'll need to press, if If you want to join the speaker queue, you'll press 3. And if you'd like to comment on another public hearing item, please wait until that item is being discussed. Again, listening by phone means that you're going to hear the meeting without the 4 to 10 second delay. So first, we're going to hear from staff on this item. Our Community Development Program Director, Paul D'Angelo, is here to make a presentation on our first public hearing, item A. Paul is queuing up, maybe. I know he's in the building because I saw him.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening.
Turn on your camera. Turn your camera. There you go.
Hi, good evening. Paul D'Angelo with the City of Asheville's Community Development Department. Should I go ahead into my... Hi, can everybody hear me? So go ahead. Okay, so I am here tonight to talk about the staff report you should have in front of you regarding the land use incentive grant for 2 Restaurant Court. Currently, we are requesting that you approve the application for the land use incentive grant for 2 Restaurant Court. This is a Kirk Booth project with a development of approximately 40 units of affordable housing, 100%, located at 2 Restaurant Court directly off Tunnel Road. All 40 units are intended to be 1-bedrooms, with 30 of the units set aside for 60% area median income, and the remaining 10% of the units for under 80% of the area median income. This proposal meets the criteria for the land use incentive grant and scores 150 points on the scoring matrix, making it valid for approximately 21 years for a property tax abatement. The current assessed value of the property is currently $786,000 with annual city tax obligation of $3,371.15. Value is estimated at $4 million, which would equal an annual grant award of $13,784.85 over the 21-year period. And over that period, the total value of the wage award would be $289,481.85. This request will be presented in unison with the $1 million Housing Trust Fund request. The combined city subsidy, should both awards be approved, would be $1.289 million for a total subsidy of approximately $32,000 per unit. This does meet the City Council goals of quality affordable housing and an equitable and diverse community. Pros of this proposal are that we'll create 40 additional units of affordable housing at both the 80 and 60% area median incomes. And it does follow along with the stated priority of 1-bedroom units that was found in the recent Bowen report. The fiscal impact of this land use incentive grant, again, the parcel currently pays a tax bill of a little over $3,000. Upon completion, the value is estimated of this 40-unit affordable housing development of approximately $4 million, allowing current rates the tax bill of $17,000 and a difference there, which would be granted every year, of $13,784. And again, this would be for 21 years. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have regarding this land use incentive grant.
Council, anyone have any questions? If not, this is a public hearing, so I will need to open the public hearing unless we're going to hear from the developer. Paul, are we hearing from the developer this evening?
I believe both Kirk Booth and Chris Day are available via phone.
Have they asked to speak, or they're just available to answer questions if there are any questions?
I believe that they're available to answer questions, but Kirk may want to say something.
Yeah, they're not set up.
This is Gwen. We did get an email a couple emails today talking about debris and some other issues. And I didn't know whether those were city issues or developer issues. So I had forwarded that email on to Ms. Campbell. I'm assuming that somebody's going to address that email, those couple emails.
Yes, ma'am, they will. And Paul, I don't know if you are able to respond or if Todd is here to respond.
I believe that Chris Day has emailed me to say that he is number 2 in the queue. I don't know if that's possible. He is speaker queue at number 2, and I believe he'd like to respond.
I'm wondering if this is going to work for us to. Looks like we're getting instruction.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Chris. This is Esther.
Oh, hello. Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This is Chris Day with Civil Design Concepts. I'll just give a super high level about the project. It is, as Paul said, it's proposing 40 affordable units on 1.31 acres. It's right off Restaurant Court, which heads up to the Longhorn Steakhouse across from the parcel location is right across from the old Cheeseburger in Paradise site. It utilizes the density bonus that the UDO provides to encourage affordable density in the commercially zoned properties. And with a 20% affordable, it can provide, it's allowed 52 residential affordable units there. This project is proposing 100% affordable units, but we were able to only fit 40 and meet the other guidelines of the city in regards to open space and parking. We do have residentially zoned properties to the west and south, and therefore, per the UDO, we're providing a landscape buffer on both of those sides. And we had a neighborhood meeting for this project on December 5th, and we heard concerns like what got mentioned a minute ago regarding trash. We also heard concerns over traffic, landscaping, and possible questions about possible use of renewable resources. To speak to that, all the traffic associated with this project, there is no connectivity to the neighborhood behind. All traffic ties to Restaurant Court, just west of Tunnel Road. Landscaping, as I mentioned, we have the required buffers per the ordinance on this project. Trash for this project will have a dumpster on site that will be screened per the ordinance and collect all trash internal on this site, and that will be managed in that fashion. And then renewable resources, while we don't have any building commitments for renewable resources at this point, at this part of the project, I did want to point out that 30% of the parking spaces are being proposed as pervious parking. As Paul said, the project scores really well with the land use incentive grant policy, and that's basically due to the amount of affordability as well as the ideal location. So in that regard, I'm here, and Kirk, I believe, is also online if there's specific questions regarding the project and the grant.
Esther, this is Julie. I've got a couple of questions, if that's all right.
Yes.
Okay. So we had gotten an email, and Kirk responded to a couple of the statements in that email. One was that there was a previous project that the neighborhoods thought was required to have a sidewalk, and I think Kirk told us that it was not required to have a sidewalk. Just want confirmation. We can get confirmation from staff on that. And then also there was a project that this email said should have had a landscaped buffer, but does not. And again, wanted to just get confirmation from staff that was, for whatever reason, you're not required, or yeah, if we could find out what's happening about those two particular instances.
I'm not sure where Paul went. There may be staff transitioning. So, Julie, if you be patient with us, we'll
Sure,
see if we
of
can
course,
get them.
of course.
Hi, good evening, Paul D'Angelo here still. And I was checking with Todd and or Ben to see if they're available to answer that question. They are not in-house, but I have emailed them. Julie, if you have any other questions I could answer, or happy to also talk about the Housing Trust Fund application that goes along with this proposal.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm happy to get answers to those by email.
We'll get those answers for you, Julie, hopefully tonight.
Any other?
I do know. I don't know if I'm still on mute or not. I do know that I did not work on the project at 444, but I have done multiple other cottage developments, which that was approved under. I know one of the concerns that got addressed was the orientation of those residential units, and I know staff could confirm or speak more to it, but the way the cottage ordinance was written, it actually was designed to have the houses front a central green, and in turn it then the back of the houses faced the primary street. After that 444 project, the city staff changed the cottage development rules to try and eliminate that from being a situation in the future. But that project at 444, at the time it was developed, was per the codes and requirements of that project, and as I understand, received its certificates of occupancy. And Kirk may be able to speak a little more to this, but received its certificate of occupancies for meeting all requirements at the time of development.
Okay, any other questions or comments before we open the public hearing?
I did receive a text from Todd with an answer to those questions, if you'd like me to read that.
Sure, yes, please.
The previous project, 444 Bowcatcher, was permitted in 2010 and is less than 20 units. I believe it's 12. It is possible that sidewalks were not required at that time. The planner that did that review and inspection in 2010 still works for the city, and I am confident he would not have approved the project if it did not comply with the standards at the time.
Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments before we open the public hearing? Okay, I am going to open the public hearing. Staff, do we have anyone in the speaker queue for this item?
Mayor, we do have people in the speaker queue for this item.
Okay. Okay, so if you are commenting through the live speaker queue, please first state your name and where you reside, and I will welcome you so you know we can hear you. You will have 3 minutes to comment, and at the end of the 3 minutes, you will hear a bell, and I will ask you to wrap up your comment. So let's give this a try.
Hello, this is Carol from Asheville. Good evening, City Council members and Mayor. Just a few questions. I've been in queue since the budget talks, so I just want to go back in time for a moment. I'd like to know, when will the Phase 2 compensation study for firefighters be reviewed, and what is the plan to fold their increase into the budget, since it sounds like the budget's going to be approved prior to the compensation study being reviewed or completed? Thank you.
Carol, can you share your live?
Pardon?
Esther's frozen.
I'm sorry.
Hello? Can you guys see and hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I was out. I'm back in. All right. Carol, are you still on the phone?
Mayor, she is no longer on the phone.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounded like that was a comment regarding the budget, and we are going to have the public hearing on the budget at our next meeting. Do we have anyone else in the speaker queue?
Mayor, we do have more people in the speaker queue, and we can proceed now.
Okay. Go ahead. Please state your name and where you reside.
Yes, this is Kirk Booth, the developer for the project.
Okay.
And I'm in the queue for this. I'm not sure I pushed the right button, so I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
I didn't know if you had any questions. I heard some of the comments before, but I can answer now, or I can wait and call back in and push some other button besides to be here.
Well, just in case we run into any logistical issues, council, do any of you have any questions of Mr. Booth at this time? Okay, I think we're good. If you want to go out, we'll see if there's anyone else that wants to provide comment on this item.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have anyone else?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and where you live.
I'm Megan Riley Buser of 451 Bowcatcher Road, and I believe in affordable housing. However, the garbage problem at 444 Bowcatcher, the neighboring development of the new one, is intolerable. Twice in the past couple months, I have picked up trash that was lying with its bin in the middle of the road. A tenant told me that the bins are overloaded because they don't get recycling service anymore, as there is no room for the bins to be placed. 24 bins every other week don't fit. Without recycling, they have too much trash to keep the bin shut, and bungee cords don't work nor keep the bears from the trash, which explains the spill and makes this a safety issue. Many of us on Bowcatcher Road have picked up this garbage in the middle of the street, and we're fed up. So here are my questions. With regard to this garbage problem, we understand there were fines to 444 Bowcatcher LLC, resulting in higher rents, making the so-called affordable housing no longer affordable to the tenants, who were told it is our fault as neighbors for complaining about it. So the tenants in turn have threatened the neighbor across the street from them. Honestly, the tenants nor us neighbors should have to pay for Booth's irresponsibility. When he built the development with so many houses smashed into one space, he chose to neglect to provide the space needed for a truck to pick up garbage from a community dumpster. If he chose the route of individual bins, is it okay and not against the law that he has made it impossible for the development to recycle? The rest of us with individual garbage bins are required by law to recycle. Why is 444 Bowcatcher an exception? How can Asheville pride itself in being green when it allows developers such as Mr. Booth to bend the knees of our planet to pollute a neighborhood? Mr. Booth did not consider the lack of space he was allowing before he started 444 Bowcatcher, previously called Bowcatcher Commons. How will the city plan to require and implement trash and recycling with the new development? You said you did, and that's good that it's going to be handled differently. The new development project is located right next to 440 Bowcatcher, on the opposite side from Bowcatcher Road. Is there a way that the garbage and recycling of the 12 units of 444 Bowcatcher can be joined to the new development's garbage and recycling plan, which there is a space right in between the two, instead of on Bowcatcher Road where there is no room to follow the law? As taxpayers, we insist that the garbage and recycling problem of 444 Bowcatcher appropriately be fixed before Asheville rewards Mr. Booth with our hard-earned money. I always demand that my children clean up their mess before going out to play. I suggest the city of Asheville do the same to Mr. Booth. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Is there anyone else waiting in the queue?
Yes, can I have a cue that I'm on cue?
Yes, please state your name.
This is Susan Andrew, and I am submitting these comments as a homeowner and a 25-year resident of Bowcatcher Road. I've engaged many city efforts, including the creation of the UDO years ago. I serve on the Haywood Street Advisory Council. I helped write the city's current noise ordinance, and I was the first chair of its noise ordinance board. So thank you for taking my comments. I'm also a proponent of affordable housing. I know that housing is especially lacking for low-income elderly and handicapped citizens in Asheville. So one-bedroom units will be of great value if they are done right. But I'm asking you tonight to withhold your approval of this project for now until you can answer the questions we've raised. Kirk Booth is requesting public funds to create this new apartment building, but there are some unresolved problems with his earlier development here on our street. You've heard about the garbage. There are unresolved issues with the vegetative buffer. It's not healthy. It's not up to standard. I think I just ask that you step back, take a deep breath, do your research, visit this site, look at the problems that are there, and ask this developer to solve the problems with the existing development before you give public funding for a new one.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the queue? If so, please state your name and where you live. All right, is there anyone else in the queue?
Mayor, that's the last person in the queue.
Okay. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. All right, at this point, council, we have a little bit of an odd process, and that is because of the legislation that was recently passed by the legislature that applies to virtual meetings of council. That legislation provides that the council shall receive comment up to 24 hours after the public hearing on an item, which means that we cannot vote on this item tonight. But what we do need to vote on is a motion to recess this public hearing to consider a land use incentive grant application for 2 Restaurant Court Rental Road. So this will be the motion to recess the public hearing to consider a land use incentive grant application for 2 Restaurant Court Rental Community, Bowcatcher Vista LLC, to June 9th for final action. So I need a motion to do that, to recess this item to June 9th.
Esther, I'm sorry.
It's Gwen. It's so moved.
And this is Julie. I'll second, but I have a comment and a suggestion before we vote.
Okay, so but just to be clear, in terms of the process, we have a motion and a second to recess this item to June 9th for final action. And for further clarity, please know that we will not take additional public comment at the June 9th meeting. However, if folks would like to submit comments, they can in writing for up to 24 hours after this hearing this evening. Yes, Councilwoman Mayfield, please proceed.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at this site on Google Maps right now. I don't know. I can't tell when this picture was taken. It does look like there is, not along Bowcatcher, but on the entrance into the development, that there would be room for those trash cans and the recycling bins. And so I guess what I want to say is, before this comes back for a vote, if we could ask staff and Kirk to work very closely together to try to address this. I know there's been a lot of conversation over the last week or so about this, but this has to be a solvable problem. And then I do, again, we don't need to address it now, but if these folks don't have recycle bins, and I remember having some correspondence with Kirk about this months and months ago, we need to figure that problem out and get that addressed, because it looks like it's the city that actually picks up trash here as opposed to a private hauler. I could be wrong about that, but it's a City of Asheville trash bin that's sitting right there in this picture. So anyway, I just would really, the two issues are separate in my mind, and I'm still going to support funding for the new project, even if this is not resolved, because Above all, we need affordable housing in Asheville, and these projects take a long time to come online. So I will continue to support funding for the project in the two aspects that we have here, but I do think we need a concerted effort to address this trash problem. Thank you.
All right, any other comments? I was trying to.
Esther, this is Gwen.
Yes.
So just point of clarification, I'm not sure I fully understand the process. So we're going to vote on this at the next go round, at the next meeting. Will there be, will council be able to discuss it, or will it just be a straight up vote once we listen to the public comment between, that come in tomorrow?
Unless Brad objects to what I'm about to say, my assumption is that we would be able to discuss it because it will be at that time that we have a motion to approve or disapprove it, and the council discussion can take place then. It's just that the public hearing portion of the process will have been concluded.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
And that is correct, Mayor. You will have the ability as a council to discuss this item prior to the final vote.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to recess the public hearing to June 9th to take final action on this item. I'm going to take a roll call vote. I'm going to begin with Vice Mayor Whistler.
Aye.
Councilman Haynes.
Aye.
Councilman Kapoor.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayfield.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smith.
Aye.
Councilman Young.
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay, next we have a public hearing to consider a land use incentive grant for Tribute Development Collier Avenue Apartments. Again, if you would like to comment live on this item, please call and listen to the meeting by phone, and remember to turn down your television or computer if you're also watching the meeting. Again, the phone number is 855-925-2801, and the access code is 8914. Once you dial in, you're going to press star for options, and then you'll press 3 to be placed into the speaker queue. If you want to comment on another item on our agenda, then call at the time we're discussing the item that you want to comment on. Again, we're going to hear from Community Development Program Director Paul D'Angelo. He will make the presentation on this item.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and City Manager. Paul D'Angelo with the Community Development Department, here to talk about the Land Use Incentive Grant application for Collier with Tribute Companies, with a request to approve this application. In review, this is will be a build at 11 Collier Avenue. The development will consist of 54 rental units, with 100% of the units, all 54 of the homes proposed, serving individuals and families making between 16 to 80% of the area median income and affordable for 20 years. The tax value post-completion on this property per the Buncombe County Tax Assessor's Office is about nearly $4.8 million. The project as presented to staff does meet the eligibility requirements for the Land Use Incentive Grant. And per the Land Use Incentive Grant scoring matrix and based on the policy, the project receives a total of 160 points overall. Per this, that would be 21 years of grants and the amount of city property taxes payable to the Collier Avenue development. In this proposal, we have affordable rental units. The developer has agreed to take rental assistance, accepting 5 housing choice vouchers. It also comes with what would be called superior locational efficiency, and again, 160 points for a total of a 21-year land use incentive grant. This does meet council goals of quality affordable housing and an equitable and diverse community. And some pros to this project, again, all 54 units will serve individuals and families under 80% of the area median income. Proposed project will be affordable for 20 years. These will all be 1-bedroom apartments, which per the Bowen report still shows a strong need for this community. The proposed project has a significant economic impact on construction. and material purchase that can positively affect our local and regional economy. And this scored very well on the walkable score of 87 and a bikeable score of 70, again for locational efficiency. Tribute companies will communicate with the Asheville Housing Authority as the development prepares to come online, as they will be accepting 5 housing choice vouchers or some form of rental assistance. A few cons to note, the cost estimates are not fully developed yet, and project costs are represented here may change. And the Collier development, while not required, is not having any parking associated with this build. For the fiscal impact, right now the property receives approximately $2,200 annual in city property taxes. After this build, if it was approved, we would rebate back or grant back $18,251 to the property owner for 21 years. For 21 years and 54 affordable units at or below that 80% area median income, the city will grant back a total of $383,292 over 21 years, which equals a little over $7,000 per unit of subsidy. After 21 years, the city would receive those property taxes of approximately $20,500 in city tax revenue. And I'm happy to answer any questions with the suggested motion be to approve this land use incentive grant. Thank you.
Esther, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment we'll probably hear some of this in the public comment. So I just want to put it out there for maybe Paul to address. Sorry, this is Julie Mayfield. So a lot of folks will know that this piece of property is also, there are many folks in our community who are trying to conserve this piece of property. And I just want to make clear to everyone who's watching and listening that our approval of this land use incentive grant does not mean that those efforts and those negotiations with the developer are finished, and that decision has been made, that the decision has been made to build here rather than to conserve this property. At this point, to my knowledge, both efforts are continuing. The development is development. I mean, it's continuing in that they have come to us for this request, but there is the developers have given the community advocates time to raise money to try to conserve this piece of land. And so our vote on this, I guess it will be at our next meeting, does not mean that the fate of this piece of property is sealed. Is that your understanding as well, Paul?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments before I open the public hearing? Any other comments from you, Paul?
I'm good, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, anyone on council, any questions or comments before I open the public hearing? Okay. All right, do we have anyone in the queue for comments on this item?
Mayor, we have 2 voicemails and people in the queue for this agenda item.
Okay. Are we going to start with the voicemail? Yes.
Or no, they're going to alternate.
Okay.
So just let them roll with it. All right, you good?
Okay, we're going to queue up a voicemail first, maybe, I think, and then alternate.
Item B, a resident of Asheville, North Carolina. By approving Tribute's Luigi grant for its Collier Avenue Apartments proposal, City Council would be signing a death warrant for the last patch of mature tree canopy and the last potential public green space in the South Slope neighborhood, which, as you know by now, has been shown to be one of the city's most dangerous heat islands and worst areas for stormwater flooding because of lack of tree cover and excess impermeable surface. This project was approved before the COVID-19 pandemic showed us the importance of reconsidering our assumptions about planning for urban density, which have not accounted for the public health importance of social distancing. This tightly packed apartment complex with its narrow passages and very narrow sidewalk is, we're now learning, practically designed to be a future disease transmission hotspot. Speaking of that narrow sidewalk, the variance that allows it is a product of this developer's cynical game of pitting affordable housing advocates against environmental advocates in order to inflate the price that he wants the neighbors who have formed the Ravenscroft Reserve Initiative to pay him for a piece of land that he knows is unsuitable for any development. Qualified consulting experts who serve on the qualified consulting tree experts who serve on the Urban Forest Commission have repeatedly pointed out that the few mature oak trees he claims to be saving by sacrificing sidewalk width will not long survive thanks to the interruption of their root networks. It's highly unlikely that he'll build here anyway if the current predictions of a long-lasting recession come true. But if you give him the green light today, you'll be, in effect, colluding with them to make it as expensive as possible for this volunteer initiative or a future city council to purchase and preserve this critical piece of downtown green space. You were elected and given the legal authority to be the ultimate frontline defenders of our public health. Please prove this city council is not a pushover for dangerously unhealthy developments that masquerade as affordable, and vote to refuse or at least postpone this grant proposal on public health grounds. And please do not use this as an opportunity to maintain the cruel but politically expedient pretense that approving this instead of today can do anything meaningful to promote affordable housing as long as our state continues to ban all genuine measures like inclusive zoning and rent control. I fully understand our desperation in the face of these oppressive and unfair state restrictions, but this is one case in which the anything is better than nothing rationale is exactly the opposite of the truth. Don't let affordability versus survivability continue to be turned into a zero-sum game that neighborhoods.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. This is Chris Day with Civil Design Concepts.
Okay.
Do you hear me? Okay, great. Just super quick. I was just going to reply to Julie's comment. Yes, she is correct. We are still with the Ravenscroft Reserve, which is the nonprofit that is working to preserve this land. We're still in active communications and conversations as recently as earlier this month, and so that is still an ongoing conversation. The comment from the voicemail, there was a comment on there about the sidewalk width. We are not requesting to modify the sidewalk width. We are proposing to do a standard 10-foot downtown sidewalk along through that area. All that being said, as I kind of think about this as just not necessarily the design professional, but a local, it's kind of a win-win. We either if the nonprofit moves forward and preserves the site, we've got there's some benefits there, but otherwise we've got a great 54-unit affordable housing project that's on the South Slope, very close to transit, very close to Mission Hospital, schools, grocery. It's a great project. So if there's further conversations or questions that come up as the project continues, I'm available to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dixie Dearman, West Asheville resident, 113 Clinton Avenue. I'm calling in reference to your upcoming meeting tomorrow about agenda item 4B, the Collier Woods proposed development. I'm very much against you guys running headlong and trying to rubber stamp Tribute's application for a quote affordability grant, unquote land use incentive grant to tear down and destroy the last forest and potential public green space on the South Slope neighborhood. It's outrageous. Stop the madness. This is no time to run headlong with bad practices and to continue to ignore and impede public input and outcry against this. Thank you.
That's the last voicemail message.
Okay, do we have any other live callers? I feel like a DJ.
Mayor, there are no more live callers in the queue. That is the end of the public comment for this agenda item.
Okay, thank you. Council, unless you have any questions or comments, I will need to repeat the same process we did with the last public hearing item, which is to have a motion to recess the public hearing to consider a land use incentive grant for Tribute Development Collier Avenue Apartments to June 9th for final action.
I have a question.
Yes, please, Brian.
If voting to recess tonight does not mean that you're required to vote yes next
That's
time.
correct. That's correct. It's just a procedural vote to move this to the next agenda for purposes of then taking action. All right, do I have a motion to recess the public hearing to consider a land use incentive grant for Tribute Development Collier Avenue Apartments to June 9th for final action?
So moved as read by the mayor.
This is Gwen. I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Anyone have any questions, comments before we vote? If not, I'll take a roll call vote once again. Vice Mayor Whistler.
Aye.
Councilman Haynes.
Aye.
Councilman Kapoor.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayfield.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smith.
Aye.
Councilman Young.
Aye.
And myself as mayor. Aye. Okay, item C, the next public hearing item is there's a request to continue this item. Do I have a motion and second to continue the public hearing of item C to June 9th? This is to amend the 2019-2020 annual action plan to allocate funds to help prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. Again, please unmute your microphone and make a motion.
This is Gwen. I'll make a motion to continue public hearing item C to June 9th.
I second that, Shamika.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. A roll call vote. Vice Mayor Whistler.
Aye.
Councilman Haynes.
Aye.
Councilman Kapoor.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayfield.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smith.
Aye.
Councilman Young.
Aye.
And myself. Aye. All right, item D, I need a motion to continue public hearing item D to July 28th. This is to consider an amendment to a previously approved conditional zoning at 137 Broad Street from Community Business 1 to Community Business 1 conditional zone to include an adjacent parcel for the construction of a new mixed use building. So do I have a motion to continue this item until July 2020?
This is Councilman Young. So moved as read by the mayor.
I'll second. This is Gwen Whistler. I'll second that.
Okay, we'll have a roll call vote. Vice Mayor Whistler.
Aye.
Councilman Haynes.
Aye.
Councilman Kapoor.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayfield.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smith.
Aye.
Councilman Young.
Aye.
And myself, aye. And then finally, the next hearing item, the item E on our public hearing agenda, I need a motion to continue this item to June 23rd. This is an item to consider an amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance to update open space requirements. Do I have a motion to continue this item to June 23rd?
This is Councilman Young. So moved as read by the mayor.
This is Gwen Whistler. I'll second. It's okay. We need to have set this up ahead of time like we did last time.
Right.
Who got the second?
Give it to Gwen.
Okay, Gwen's got the second. All right. Roll call. Vice Mayor Whistler.
Aye.
Councilman Haynes.
Aye.
Councilman Kapoor.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayfield.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smith.
Aye.
Councilman Young.
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay, that concludes our public hearings agenda. We have one item for new business on the agenda tonight. Again, staff will be presenting virtually, so we'll need to be changing the screen so we can all see the presented information and the staff presenting. This is a resolution approving a housing trust fund loan for 2 restaurant court rental community Bowcatcher Vista LLC. Again, if you would like to comment on this item live, you can call in. And I'm going to read the phone number again. The phone number is 855-925-2801. And you'll want to enter code 8914. Again, remember, there is a bit of a lag between the time that you'll see it on your computer or on the TV versus what you're hearing on the phone. The phone you will experience in real time. All right. And remember, when you call in, you'll need to press the asterisk key and item. If you press 3, you can be placed into the live queue. All right, we're going to hear from Paul D'Angelo, our Community Development Program Manager, who is the star of the show tonight here. And take it away, Paul.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening again. Paul D'Angelo with the Community Development Department here for the kind of second part of the 2 restaurant court request. This is a request from Kirk Booth and Bowcatcher Vista LLC for a $1 million housing trust fund loan for the 40 affordable units that we discussed earlier at 2 restaurant court. To go over this staff report, just reminding that since 2009, Mr. Booth has completed 9 affordable housing projects in partnership with the city of Asheville, resulting in 136 affordable units, and a recent partnership here with Clayton Homes for modular building that would happen here at 2 restaurant court. The developer seeks a $1 million housing trust fund loan, and as a reminder, with the land use incentive grant that we discussed earlier at $289,000. Units will be made available to qualified affordable housing residents as well as citizens possessing rental assistance. The developer has demonstrated a history of close engagement with the Asheville Housing Authority, Homeward Bound, and other entities in providing rental assistance. Council goals of quality affordable housing and an equitable and diverse community. Some pros of this project, there is a set aside that a majority of the units, 75% of these units, will be under 60% of the area median income and will be accepting that rental assistance. And the per unit subsidy for the housing trust fund is $25,000 per unit. In combination with the land use incentive grant, it's a little over $32,000 per unit in subsidy. Fiscal impact, it would be $1 million to the Housing Trust Fund, and the loan will be structured as a full repayment of principal and interest accruing at 2% annually over 20%, over 20 years. And again, if I hadn't mentioned, these would be affordable units for 20 years as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Are there any questions?
Yep, Mayor, this is VJ. Paul, just a quick question. In the staff report, you talked about having a majority at 60%, and I just heard you say 75% would be at 60%. I just wanted to confirm that. Is that correct? 75% of the units would be 60% AMI?
That's correct. 40 units, and 30 of those units, 75% of them will be set aside for 60% AMI, area median income, or under.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
I'm happy to make a motion if we're ready for that.
Yes.
This is Julie. I make a motion that we approve the request by Kirk Booth by Bowcatcher Vista LLC to borrow funds from the Housing Trust Fund as indicated in the memo.
Hey, just a question. This is Gwen, just procedurally. Can we approve this when we haven't yet approved the development?
Brad, do you want to jump in there and comment on that, or Paul, if you know?
Sure, Vice Mayor, I can mention that, and Paul may be able to add some additional context, but this particular item is only for the award of the Housing Trust Fund, which is tied directly to the proposed development. If the other item was not then approved, the development itself would no longer be viable as currently proposed, and therefore there would be no housing trust fund applicable to this particular development. And if any new development came up, it would have to resubmit for consideration for any additional subsidies.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion from Julie Mayfield. Do I have a second?
This is Councilman Young. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any, we do not have any voicemails for this item, but do we have anyone live in the queue?
Mayor, we do not have anybody in the speaker queue for this agenda item.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or comments before I take a roll call vote? All right, here we go. Vice Mayor Whistler.
Aye.
Councilman Haynes.
Aye.
Councilman Kapoor. Unmute here.
Mayor, I think he got kicked out.
Uh-oh. Okay, maybe he'll come back in, and I'll go to Councilwoman Mayfield.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smith.
Aye.
Councilman Young.
Aye.
And I'm voting aye as well. Do we, we don't have VJ back.
He's back. There he is.
Yeah, he is. He's back.
Yeah, I just got back. Sorry, guys.
Waiting on your vote, VJ.
Could someone just repeat the motion? I believe I know what it is, but I want to make sure I know it.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Okay, I'm back. I briefly got kicked out there, and I don't know if anyone can see me, but that was a motion to approve this new business item, our only new business item. This is a resolution approving a housing trust fund loan for 2 restaurant court rental community, Bowcatcher Vista LLC. And everyone has had a chance to vote. I'm sorry, while you were kicked out. So,
Yes.
Councilman Kapoor, how do you vote?
Yes, Mayor, I vote aye.
Okay, all right, thank you. That is everyone voting on this item. Okay, this, now we've reached the portion of, thank you, Paul. I can't see anymore my screen, but thank you wherever you are. We've reached the portion of the agenda of informal discussion and public comment. Staff, do we have any public comment for informal discussion and public comment?
Mayor, we have 5 voicemails, and at this time, 1 caller in the queue for open public comment. We'll start with our voicemails and then move right to the live caller and alternate back and forth and let you know when we've reached the end of those calls and people in the queue.
Okay, and could everyone mute themselves, please? Maggie, you especially, Julie, thank you.
Hello, this is Ruth Johnson. I live in West Asheville on Wellington Street and am calling to add my concern to the issue about the nightly fireworks, mortar rounds, explosions. Sometimes I've not known if it was gunshots, and it's increasing. And I have called the police a number of times, but I cannot pinpoint where they're coming from. And I'm wondering if there isn't some way for us to have surveillance with Google Maps or something. So I will be interested to hear what solutions you are able to come up with. Thank you for all the hard work you've been doing. Bye-bye.
Good evening. My name is Kim Roney. First, I want to share gratitude for your service and our staff and hope for good health for your loved ones. Second, after significant conversation in our community, it must be said that we're long overdue in recognizing the need to pay our firefighters $15 an hour. Not only are we currently violating the city's own living wage policy, we're setting an example that our frontline essential workers are not valued or even wanted to live here in our community, as it has been named that living outside of Asheville is perceived as a benefit of the job. Surely that is not the message we want to send to our first responders or any potential recruits who have always dreamt of being a firefighter in their town. I ask you to please support the Asheville firefighters and the AIFF Local 332 in their fight for a $15 an hour wage floor. Third, in the past 6 years of budget seasons, I have witnessed this creative input made available through our boards and commissions, a critical part of our process that ensures public participation and community oversight. We are missing invaluable input of our volunteer commission members during this year's budget process, as well as additional public comment opportunities provided during these meetings. Please support efforts to return boards and commissions to virtual meetings, especially those that would provide impact on CARES Act funding. We are just 2 weeks away from the only public hearing available for our next budget before it's passed. Lastly, we need a creative way to ensure public engagement in this year's budget process. I myself have experienced being declined an option for public comment in this meeting due to an error when I was the only one in the queue, which solidifies my original suggestion that we need a 2-week survey or other way to engage the public, perhaps using the GARE process used for the noise ordinance. Otherwise, a continuance budget may be needed as we count on you to enter into this agreement of our tax spending to support our priorities and shared values. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caroline W. I'm a lifelong resident of Asheville, North Carolina. I'm calling to express concern, dismay, horror, just sadness, really, really deep sadness that there has been a decision to continue the reopening as set by the state. We have the capacity to have stricter rules. I want to be proud of Buncombe County. I want to be proud of Asheville. And today I'm just feeling utterly disgusted. There is no reason to continue this reopening. It is horrific. More and more and more people are going to die. Tourists are going to come to our city and take it back to where they live. Tourists are going to come infect our essential workers and the folks who were not deemed essential but are now forced to go back to work in this tourist economy. It's awful. I'm really, really begging council to consider to stop the reopening, go back to essential businesses only with masks and protective gear provided to workers, shutting down leisure travel, providing accessible testings and masks. We know from what we've seen in other countries that this is the only way to halt the pandemic. Give direct funds for hardest hit communities. We know that our Black and brown citizens and immigrant citizens are dying at a faster rate, and there is no reason that we can't cut budgets such as police or staff salaries or tourism boards to give money to those who are hardest hit, and opening hotels for our homeless community, not just in hotels that are miles and miles away from the areas where these folks actually, live, but in downtown. There's just no reason to not house people at this moment, and no more eviction enforcement. It is just, it's ridiculous. I'm begging that this is considered. I'm begging that this is considered. Yeah, that's all I can say. When I look at the cover of the New York Times and see 100,000 names, and then this decision is made, it's unconscionable. It's unconscionable.
Hi, my name is Nina Hart, and I live in Asheville on Wellington Street. And I'm not commenting on it. I'm commenting on, this is an open comment, because there's no agenda item for this. I am calling about the nightly mortar rounds that have been going off in East-West Asheville, and I've lived here for 6 years. And while this has been an occurrence sometimes the last few months since quarantine, it has been escalating, is awful, is waking us up twice a night, usually going off at around 10 and also around 1 a.m. And of course, you all know this especially affects children, animals, the elderly, and people with PTSD. So we are trying to get answers. Evidently, there have been more resources delegated to this issue over here. Officer Senyak said it might be because that it's going on in Pisgah, although we hear it from other directions, and so many of us might take issue with the fact that it is only coming from Pisgah. At any rate, we are very frustrated, and we should not have to live like this. I just don't know what to say. It is affecting thousands and thousands of people at this point. Thank you for listening. Bye.
My name is Christopher, Asheville, North Carolina, 181 Wellington Street, calling to solicit resources to help combat the fireworks that are happening near our house and causing all kinds of disruption. I'm pretty sure the launch area is fairly close to Michigan Road off of Haywood. Just very disruptive, obviously causing all kinds of trouble with kids sleeping and dogs. And then putting old people and other people with mental illness at risk. So if you could please put some resources towards stopping this activity. Thank you. Bye-bye.
My name is Elizabeth Horn. I live on Wellington Street, and the item of concern is all the fireworks that are being released every night between 9:30 and 10:30. Thank you.
That's the last public comment.
Okay. Do we have anyone in the queue for public comment?
No, Mayor, that is the last of the open public comments.
Okay, thank you. All right, that concludes our agenda for this evening. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm remembering. We did get a bunch of callers that talked about hearing fireworks or something like that in West Asheville. And we do have our Deputy Chief Bonstark, I understand, with us here this evening, who might be able to speak to that concern. Chief Deputy Bonstark, are you on virtually?
There it goes.
There you are.
There I am. Good evening. Asheville Police Department has been very busy during this long holiday weekend and the start of phase 2 as the community starts coming outside in downtown. We are very aware of the fireworks. 2 weekends ago, we had 4 calls for fireworks. This holiday weekend, we had 68 calls for fireworks. Almost half of them were on Memorial Day into the morning of Tuesday. This issue comes up almost every holiday in Asheville. People like their fireworks. Most of these current calls are in and around Pisgah apartments. There are several enforcement issues on Pisgah. Once again, it's a large complex with limited accesses into the community. These are not static displays. These are individuals that are going out in the community, lighting the fireworks and then running before they actually go off. Historically, when we've done enforcement, it's almost always juveniles that we catch doing these. And obviously, we don't want to start over-policing neighborhoods for nonviolent crimes. So we have taken an approach of, instead of focusing on enforcement, we've focused on deterrence and education. And we've done this by, lately, we've increased patrol, and we've had the housing units focusing down on the Pisgah area to talk to residents in the community. We've increased our education through the Housing Authority and through social media. Just this afternoon, we put some media tweets out about the dangers of fireworks and exactly what is a legal firework and what is an illegal firework. And we're working with the management and community to help educate the community next door, crime prevention officers, social media. We're continuing to monitor the calls to see if they decrease or increase, as historically these calls decrease after the holiday is over. If you guys got any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
This is Julie. I'll just add that I did speak with David Nash, the director of the Housing Authority, earlier today about this. And he was not aware of the magnitude of the problem. I guess people are calling the police and not the Housing Authority, which is, he confirmed, the right thing to do because you all are the ones who can respond immediately. But he did also mention to me that they have requirements in their lease around quiet times and things like that, sort of the normal things that you would have in a multifamily lease. And so they're going to be looking at options that they have to sort of remind people about those requirements of their lease.
Thanks for that. Julie Mayfield is our liaison to the Housing Authority, so thank you. Anybody else have any questions for the Chief Deputy Baumstark or any other item that you want to mention before we adjourn? We have reached the end of our agenda. Okay, and we do not have a closed session as far as I know, unless Brad's about to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we do not have a closed session.
No correction, Mayor.
Okay, all right. With that, we are adjourned.